The views and opinions of this broadcast do not reflect the views and opinions of Armed Media, New Productions and its affiliates. Enjoy the show.
I'm your darkest dream. They call me devil. My heart is empty. They call me devil, and you should be
afraid. This show is based on true events. For legal purposes, we are not mental or medical or legal professionals, and we do not claim to be. If you observe or experiencing abuse, please seek help and report it. There is help. We may use video, audio, and other means to discuss the subject of true crime. For those of you who are sensitive, it's not your show, because we talk about graphic stuff and it's not pretty. So let's get started with the show. Well, it is Friday on Armed Radio, and this is Betrayal. And I'm your host, Kasy, for another true crime history mystery flippity floppity things.
Do you like my poppy? I'm wearing one because today is Remembrance Day. In a moment, at exactly 11 o'clock, on the 11th day of the 11th month of the year, people all over the country will remember those who've been lost in war. Let's all remember together.
Look, see these flowers? These are poppies. There's a legend that says where battles were fought, these white flowers all turned red, and in the center of each flower there was a cross. The actual British field dressing station. There, Lieutenant Colonel J.M. McRae wrote the famous poem In Flanders Fields. In Flanders Fields the poppies blow, between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place. And in the sky, the larks still bravely singing, fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Fields. In Flanders Fields the poppies blow, between the crosses, row on row.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
Fellow Americans, today we are here to celebrate and to honor and to commemorate the dead and the living. The young men who in every war since this country began have given testimony to their loyalty to their country and their own great courage. I do not believe that any nation in the history of the world has buried its soldiers further from its native soil than we Americans, or buried them closer to the towns in which they grew up. We celebrate this Veterans Day for a very few minutes, a few seconds of silence, and then this country's life goes on. But I think it most appropriate that we recall on this occasion and on every other moment when we are faced with great responsibilities, the contribution and the sacrifice which so many men and their families have made in order to permit this country to now occupy its present position of responsibility and freedom, and in order to permit us to gather here together. Bruce Catton, after totaling the casualties which took place in the Battle of Antietam, not so very far from this cemetery, when he looked at statistics which showed that in the short space of a few minutes, whole regiments lost 50 to 75% of their numbers, then wrote that life perhaps isn't the most precious gift of all, that men died for the possession of a few feet of a cornfield or a rocky hill, or for almost nothing at all. But in a very larger sense, they died that this country might permit it to go on, and that it might permit it to be fulfilled, the great hopes of its founders. In a world tormented by tension and the possibilities of conflict, we meet in a quiet commemoration of an historic day of peace. In an age that threatens the survival of freedom, we join together to honor those who made our freedom possible. The resolution of the Congress, which first proclaimed Armistice Day, described November 11, 1918, as the end of the most destructive, sanguinary, and far-reaching war in the history of human annals. That resolution expressed the hope that the First World War would be, in truth, the war to end all wars. It suggested that those men who had died had therefore not given their lives in vain. It is a tragic fact that these hopes have not been fulfilled, that wars still more destructive and still more sanguinary followed, that man's capacity to devise new ways of killing his fellow men has far outstripped his capacity to live in peace with his fellow men. Some might say, therefore, that this day has lost its meaning, that the shadow of the new and deadly weapons have robbed this day of its great value, that whatever name we now give to this day, whatever flags we fly, or prayers we utter, it is too late to honor those who died before, and too soon to promise the living an end to organized death. But let us not forget that November 11th, 1918, signified a beginning as well as an end. The purpose of all war, said Augustine, is peace. The First World War produced man's first great effort in recent times to solve by international cooperation the problems of war. That experiment continues in our present day, still imperfect, still short of its responsibility, but it does offer a hope that someday nations can live in harmony. For our part, we shall achieve that peace only with patience and perseverance and courage. The patience and perseverance necessary to work with allies of diverse interests but common goals. The courage necessary over a long period of time to overcome an adversary skilled in the art of harassment and obstruction. There is no way to maintain the frontiers of freedom without cost and commitment and risk. There is no swift and easy path to peace in our generation. No man who witnessed the tragedies of the last war, no man who can imagine the unimaginable possibilities of the next war, can advocate war out of irritability or frustration or impatience. But let no nation confuse our perseverance and patience with fear of war or unwillingness to meet our responsibilities. We cannot save ourselves by abandoning those who are associated with us or rejecting our responsibilities. In the end, the only way to maintain the peace is to be prepared in the final extreme to fight for our country and to mean it. As a nation, we have little capacity for deception. We can convince friend and foe alike that we are in earnest about the defense of freedom only if we are in earnest and I can assure the world that we are. This cemetery was first established 97 years ago. In this hill were first buried men who died in an earlier war, a savage war here in our own country. 99 years ago today, the men in gray were retiring from Antietam, where thousands of their comrades had fallen between dawn and dusk in one terrible day. And the men in blue were moving towards Fredericksburg, where thousands would soon lie by a stone wall in heroic and sometimes miserable death. It was a cruel moment in our nation's history.
I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat. We have before us an ordeal of the most grievous kind. We have before us many, many long months of struggle and of suffering. You ask, what is our policy? I will say, it is to wage war by sea, land, and air, with all our might, with all the strength that God can give us, to wage war against a monstrous tyranny never surpassed in the dark and lamentable catalogue of human crime. That is our policy. You ask, what is our aim? I can answer in one word: victory. Victory at all costs. Victory in spite of all terror. Victory however long and hard the road may be. For without victory there is no survival.
Now we are the masters of our fate. That the task which has been set us is not above our strength. That its pangs and toils are not beyond our endurance. As long as we have faith in our cause and an unconquerable willpower, salvation will not be denied us.
Hitler knows that he will have to break us in this island or lose the war. Let us, therefore, brace ourselves to our duties, and so bear ourselves that if the British Empire and its Commonwealth last for 1,000 years, men will still say, this was their finest hour. Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few. We shall fight in France. We shall fight on the seas and oceans. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender. Never give in. Never, never, never. In nothing, great or small, large or petty, never give in except to convictions of honor and good sense. Never yield to force. Never yield to the apparently overwhelming might of the enemy. We stood all alone a year ago, and to many countries it seemed that our account was closed. We were finished. All this tradition of ours, our school history, our songs, this part of the history of our country, all were gone and finished and liquidated. Very different is the mood today. Britain, other nations thought, had drawn a sponge across her slate. But instead our country stood in the gap. There was no flinching, no thought of giving in. And by what seemed almost a miracle to those outside these islands, though we ourselves never doubted it, we now find ourselves in a position where I say we can be sure that we have only to persevere to conquer.
That no bastard ever won a war by dying for his country. He won it by making the other poor dumb bastard die for his country. Men, all this stuff you've heard about America not wanting to fight, wanting to stay out of the war, is a lot of horse dung. Americans traditionally love to fight. All real Americans love the sting of battle. When you were kids, you all admired the champion marble shooter, the fastest runner, big league ball players, the toughest boxers. Americans love a winner and will not tolerate a loser. Americans play to win all the time. I wouldn't give a hoot in hell for a man who lost and laughed. That's why Americans have never lost and will never lose a war. Because the very thought of losing is hateful to Americans. Now, an army is a team. It lives, eats, sleeps, fights as a team. This individuality stuff is a bunch of crap. The bilious bastards who wrote that stuff about individuality for the Saturday Evening Post don't know anything more about real battle than they do about fornicating. Now, we have the finest food and equipment, the best spirit, and the best men in the world. You know, my God, I actually pity those poor bastards we're going up against. By God, I do. We're not just going to shoot the bastards. We're going to cut out their living guts and use them to grease the treads of our tanks. We're going to murder those lousy Hun bastards by the bushel. Some of you boys, I know, are wondering whether or not you'll chicken out under fire. Don't worry about it. I can assure you that you will all do your duty. The Nazis are the enemy.
Send them to hell.
Wade into them. Spill their blood. Shoot them in the belly. When you put your hand into a bunch of goo that a moment before was your best friend's face, you'll know what to do. Now, there's another thing I want you to remember. I don't want to get any messages saying that we are holding our position. We're not holding anything. Let the Hun do that. We are advancing constantly, and we're not interested in holding on to anything except the enemy. We're going to hold on to him by the nose, and we're going to kick him in the ass. We're going to kick the hell out of him all the time, and we're going to go through him like crap through a goose. There's one thing that you men will be able to say when you get back home, and you may thank God for it. 30 years from now, when you're sitting around your fireside with your grandson on your knee, and he asks you, what did you do in the Great World War II? You won't have to say, well, I shoveled shit in Louisiana. All right, now, you sons of bitches, you know how I feel. I will be proud to lead you wonderful guys into battle anytime, anywhere. That's all.
A few moments ago, I placed a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier. And as I stepped back and stood during the moment of silence that followed, I said a small prayer. And it occurred to me that each of my predecessors has had a similar moment, and I wondered if our prayers weren't very much the same, if not identical. We celebrate Veterans Day on the anniversary of the armistice that ended World War I. The armistice that began on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. And I wonder, in fact, if all Americans' prayers aren't the same as those I mentioned a moment ago. For all we can ever do for our heroes is remember them and remember what they did, and memories are transmitted through words. We see these soldiers in our mind as old and wise. We see them as something like the founding fathers, grave and gray-haired. But most of them were boys when they died, and they gave up two lives, the one they were living and the one they would have lived. When they died, they gave up their chance to be husbands and fathers and grandfathers. They gave up their chance to be revered old men. They gave up everything for our country, for us. And all we can do is remember. There's always someone who is remembering for us. No matter what time of year it is or what time of day, there are always people who come to this cemetery, leave a flag or a flower or a little rock on a headstone. And they stop and bow their heads and communicate what they wished to communicate. I think sometimes of General Matthew Ridgway, who, the night before D-Day, tossed sleepless on his cot and talked to the Lord and listened for the promise that God made to Joshua. I will not fail thee, nor forsake thee. We are surrounded today by the dead of our wars. We owe them a debt we can never repay. All we can do is remember them and what they did and why they had to be brave for us. All we can do is try to see that other young men never have to join them. Today, as never before, we must pledge to remember the things that will continue the peace. Today, as never before, we must pray for God's help in broadening and deepening the peace we enjoy. Let us pray for freedom and justice and a more stable world. And let us make a compact today with the dead, a promise in the words for which General Ridgway listened: I will not fail thee nor forsake thee.
We are going into Iraq to liberate and not to conquer. We will not fly our flags in their country. Now, there are some who are alive at this moment who will not be alive shortly. Those of them who do not wish to go on that journey, we will not send them. As for the others, I expect you to rock their world. Wipe them out, if that's what they choose. If you are ferocious in battle, remember to be magnanimous in victory. Iraq is steeped in history. It is the site of the Garden of Eden, of the Great Flood. It is the birthplace of Abraham. You tread lightly there. You'll have to go a long way to find a more decent, generous, and upright people than the Iraqis. You'll be embarrassed at the hospitality they offer you, even though they have nothing. Do not treat them as refugees in their own country. Now, if there are casualties of war, remember that when they got up this morning and got dressed, they did not plan to die this day. So allow them dignity in death. Bury them with due reverence and properly mark their graves. It remains my foremost intention to bring every single one of you out alive. But there may be those among us who will not see the end of this campaign. And we will put them in their sleeping bags and we will send them back, and there will be no time for sorrow. We will grieve for them later. The enemy should be in no doubt that we are his nemesis and we are bringing about his rightful destruction. But remember, it is a big step to take another human life. It is not to be done lightly. I know of men who have taken life needlessly in other conflicts. I can assure you, they live with the mark of Cain upon them. And I know your ma's will be in the queue at the co-op next week, and they won't want you to let them down. Let's bring everybody home safely and leave Iraq a better place for us having been there. Our business now is north. Good luck.
Gather around real quick. He's got something really important to say. I want to hear a pin drop. Stop moving, gather around. This is really, really important, okay? Okay, hold on.
Get your ass in the water.
This feels like the old days.
I was always fearful of going back. I'm to get rid of the demons that I had about going back. However, in the past couple of years, I said, at my age, I'm ready for anything.
He hasn't been back in 75 years. I mean, it's pretty amazing today to go into St. Mary Police and see 30,000 people there just to shake your hand, just to say hi. And it's so important that you guys know, after 75 years, we don't forget.
I see that in my mind like it happened yesterday.
We thank you for everything you have done for us. You sacrificed your life to save ours and to give us back our freedom. Thanks to your brave acts, we can walk again on this Norman beach. We owe you more than thanks. You are real heroes.
They came wave after wave, without question, without hesitation, and without complaint. These men ran through the fires of hell, moved by a force no weapon could destroy. The fierce patriotism of a free, proud, and sovereign people.
I've never forgotten, and you're with me. I know of 48 of my comrades are in there. Ralph Courtney, Amos Savoy, Henry Younger. This is so precious to be with them. God, thank you, God.
Bring you guys back here is such a blessing, such an honor. It means a lot. I'm glad you guys are here. Without the game of football, I would never have this opportunity, this platform to do what I'm doing. To bring all you guys back here, to be together with your brothers. All you guys were here during the war together. You guys know what it's about, to be part of a team, to be part of a brotherhood. Because of you guys, we can live in this country free.
Never had the chance like we're taking now to stop and take a look at this.
I've become emotional. Seeing all the crosses out there, each one of them was a human being. He wanted to live too.
They were mostly young men, 18, 19, hardly more than boys. They died on the beaches of Normandy, across France, Germany, and Italy. They never lived to love and marry a woman or feel the joy of a newborn baby in their arms. They never lived to old age, but millions of people did live and live in freedom because of the sacrifices of the American and the Allied fighting man of 75 years ago. The fighting men of the greatest generation. We will never forget them.
A soldier sometimes has to go through things that people don't know about, and a lot of times we don't bother to tell them. Y'all's done something that I would have thought impossible. If you'd told me what you was going to do, I'd have said they can't do it. Impossible. I was just coming in on this end up here. My first objection to that lowest gun emplacement.
How does it feel to be here again?
Not like it felt the first time. To think 75 years later, seemed like yesterday. Sometimes I still feel like I'm going to wake up and it's not going to be true. I wish it would go away. I wish it'd go away. I don't feel myself a hero. I feel they're all the heroes. I have 4 Bronze Stars. I have 5 battle campaigns, 2 presidential citations. But you know what? There's a hero here today. And I want to thank him. That's Donnie for what he has done for my life to come back here. You don't know how much I love you for that, Donnie. This is the highlight of my life.
Never comes again, we're coming back to take care of you.
Speak. I can't. You must. It's our only hope. I'm sorry. I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business. I don't want to rule or conquer anyone. I should like to help everyone if possible. Jew, Gentile, black man, white. We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that. We want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's misery. We don't want to hate and despise one another. In this world there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate, has goose-stepped us into misery and bloodshed. We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. Our knowledge has made us cynical, our cleverness hard and unkind. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness and gentleness. Without these qualities, life will be violent, and all will be lost. The aeroplane and the radio have brought us closer together. The very nature of these inventions cries out for the goodness in men, cries out for universal brotherhood, for the unity of us all. Even now my voice is reaching millions throughout the world, millions of despairing men, women and little children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people. To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people, and so long as men die, liberty will never perish. Soldiers, don't give yourselves to brutes, men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, or what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men, machine men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines, you are not cattle, you are men. You have the love of humanity in your hearts. You don't hate, only the unloved hate, the unloved and the unnatural. Soldiers, don't fight for slavery, fight for liberty. In the 17th chapter of St. Luke it is written, the kingdom of God is within man, not one man nor a group of men, but in all men, in you. You, the people, have the power to create machines, the power to create happiness. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful, to make this life a wonderful adventure. Then in the name of democracy, let us use that power. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world, a decent world, that will give men a chance to work, that will give youth a future and old age a security. By the promise of these things, brutes have risen to power, but they lie. They do not fulfill that promise. They never will. Dictators free themselves, but they enslave the people. Now let us fight to fulfill that promise. Let us fight to free the world, to do away with national barriers, to do away with greed, with hate and intolerance. Let us fight for a world of reason, a world where science and progress will lead to all men's happiness. Soldiers, in the name of democracy, let us all unite!
From the NBC newsroom in New York, President Roosevelt said in a statement today that the Japanese have attacked Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, from the air. I'll repeat that. President Roosevelt says that the Japanese have attacked Pearl Harbor in Hawaii from the air.
We will interrupt all programs to give you latest news bulletins. Stay tuned to this station.
The Jell-O program brought to you by Jell-O and Jell-O puddings.
Ladies and gentlemen, a special announcement. The entire regular personnel of the sheriff's and police office has been placed on a 2-platoon basis with 12-hour shift. All auxiliary personnel has been directed to stand by for emergency service instructions. The regular county defense program is functioning in an orderly manner, and citizens are urged to remain calm and avoid all unnecessary confusion because of hysteria. Citizen volunteers are asked to go quietly to their nearest police or fire stations and offer their services if they wish to help. There is no immediate cause for alarm, and coolness will accomplish more than anything else.
We return you now to Hollywood. Tomorrow, when you visit your grocer's, look at the shelf where you always see those familiar packages of Jell-O. Right beside them, or very near them, you'll spy another Jell-O product. Jell-O puddings in 3 grand flavors: chocolate, vanilla, and butterscotch. You might try Jell-O butterscotch pudding. It's as smooth as cream and simply full of rich, golden butterscotch flavor. A pudding that your whole family will want to enjoy again and again. So when you order Jell-O puddings, too. They're just like Grandma's, only more so. This is the National Broadcasting Company.
Go ahead, Honolulu.
Several planes have been shot down, and anti-aircraft gunnery is very heavy. All lines of communication seem to be down between the various Army posts. Everyone here in the islands were taken by surprise by the attack, and even yet it's difficult for some people to believe that our air raid on these beautiful islands has actually happened and that lives have been lost. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, several squadrons of Japanese planes came in from the south, dropping bombs and incendiary bombs over the city. One bomb dropped in front of the governor's mansion. Traffic is almost at a standstill. At Pearl Harbor, 3 ships were attacked. The Oklahoma was set afire. There is great activity there now in clearing the debris. The governor has proclaimed a state of emergency. The Army has issued orders for all people, the civilian population, to remain off the streets. After machine gunning Ford Island, the first Japanese planes moved to Hickam Field. There were 350 men killed in a direct bomb hit on the barracks at Hickam Field.
A bulletin from New York. The Japanese took over the American Shanghai Power and Light Company this morning. This news came hours after the bombing of Honolulu. This is the National Broadcasting Company.
It takes 79 men to operate this turret and its 3 guns. Incidentally, this is a 3-gun turret, not a triple-gun turret. That means each gun can elevate independently of the others. These 16-inch guns are the main armament on the BB-61 class ships. And you'll find 3 turrets with a total of 9 guns. The combined rate of fire is over 18 rounds a minute. But you can see only a small part of it from out here. Come on inside and see what this modern 16-inch turret structure is really like.
My name is Wilbur Richardson, native of Long Beach, California. Entered the service in early 1943, February of 43, and completed my tour and other times in the service till the end of the war. This was my operational position, the ball turret. It is 43 inches in diameter. It spins completely around 360 degrees in 4 seconds time, and up and down the same way. And it's in here that I get it. I enter the turret after takeoff, and I crank with this crank the gun straight down, bringing the door, which is over here, inside the airplane. Of course, it's facing back here, and the door lays on the floor, and then I step into it, close it up, and the waist gunners, one of will make sure that I close the handles on the turret correctly, and they're in all the way. So we're in the turret all but maybe a half hour of the whole trip. The island of England was a combat zone, and so we could be attacked at any time. It was on our first mission to Berlin in May that an accident happened to one of our airplanes in the group, and I happened to see it from beginning to almost the end because I couldn't see when he hit the ground. But Mr. Reed was supposed to be on our right, flying right wing off Mr. Mance. And when we got to the target, Mr. Reed was on our left and a bit below us. And I mentioned that to the other crew. I saw that. And I figured he'd stay there and be all right. And for some reason, he started drifting to our right, to his right, then to ours. And as he went under us, I had to tell the bombardier to look down there. There's an airplane right below us. Don't drop if it comes out at this time. And so he looked down and he says, "Oh my God," didn't want to see that. And as the airplane went past us, bombs were dropped. And about that time, the airplane above us, in this formation that was above us, his first bomb came down, and it came down fairly close to us. That's one reason I looked at it, because it's pretty close to us, our wing and between our wing and tail, but it was out a ways. And then as I looked at it and followed it down, Reed's airplane was right under that bomb, and that bomb hit the left stabilizer. And I watched that, and the airplane immediately started down because the airplane had his elevator was locked down. He couldn't control it. He didn't know that at the time, because pictures show that he attempted to put the elevator back up where it should be by using the trim tab to force it up. But because it was locked in a locking position, when, like, we park them, the pilot pulls the lever and it locks the elevators and rudder so they don't blow in the wind. And this elevator was locked in that position, so he had no control. And so they started straight down, and by the time he figured he couldn't have control, he probably couldn't tell the crew to bail out because he couldn't move his hand over to the side of the airplane and push the button for bailout. And because they were all tied in, they were dropping so fast, unfortunately. And the airplane never twisted or turned, at least as far as it was above the clouds. There was a broken cloud, so we could see it most of the way, but it never twisted or turned. It went straight down, and the pictures show that the last picture that shows the airplane shows it aimed right towards the spot that he was over when the bombs hit him. So, unfortunate accident, and these things happen occasionally. In this time, it was pilot error for being out of the formation, and then started to drift to the right. If he hadn't drifted, he wouldn't have been hit.
My fellow Americans, the living memory of the World War is close to each and every one of us today. Our thoughts return to the great objectives of the past, even as the minds of older men go back to their boyhood's ideals. We Americans were so placed in those days that we gained a perspective of the great world conflict that was perhaps clearer than that of our fellow men who were closer to the scene of battle. For most of the first 3 years of the conflict, we were not participants, but during the final phase, we ourselves engaged on many fronts. For that reason, perhaps, we understood as well as any the cries that went up that the world conflict should be made a war to end war. We were not invaded, nor were we threatened with invasion then or later. But the very distance of our view led us to perceive the dire results of war through days of following peace. To avoid and to end war. So, my friends, that is why we too have striven with great consistency to approve steps to remove the causes of war and to disapprove steps taken by others to commit acts of aggression. We have either led or performed our full part in every important attempt to limit and to reduce world armaments. We have sought by definite act and solemn commitment to establish the United States as a good neighbor among nations. We are acting to simplify definitions and facts by calling war war when armed invasion and a resulting killing of human beings take place. But though our course is consistent and clear, it is with disappointment and sorrow that most Americans confess that the world's gain thus far has been small. I would not be frank with you if I did not tell you that the dangers that confront the future of mankind are, as a whole, greater to the world and therefore to us than the dangers that confront the people of the United States.
I thought that it'd be interesting to kind of change directions for the show. Now, if you think about war is about killing. It's about people being murdered and opposition fighting against those who would murder and maim men, women, and children and other people. And so I thought with Veterans Day, remembrance on Sunday for the British and for the Americans on the 11th, commemorating 11/11/11, And the reason why is, well, you've heard about the reason why, is because it was the hour, the day of the stop. Now, in the past, before it was called Veterans Day, it was called Armistice Day. And so, then we changed it. It's still called that in Britain, but the United States, we changed it to Veterans Day. Memorial Day is a day that we memorialize those who gave their lives in the call of duty. Veterans Day is for those who are living, remembering those who came before them, and also a tribute to those living and serving their respected countries in service. And so, I come from a long line of veterans. My grandfather was in World War II. My great-grandfather was in World War I. I've got other relatives who've served in every branch of the services. And in fact, there are statues and monuments to some of those people because they gave and they served what was called up and beyond the call of duty. My grandfather, when he went into World War II, there were portions of the military that were not created. And I've got medals and things like that for departments that have been changed to other departments. You had, I believe it was the military, the Navy, and the Air Force was in its infancy. Radio operation people, it was just a lot of things were being created in World War II, departments and protocols and things like that. And my grandfather served on, I believe it was a B-52 as a gunner in the little hole at the bottom of the plane. So he was there in London, in France, in Switzerland. He was observing the epic of the battles. And he passed away in 2007. And he was part of the silent generation. He did not like to talk about World War II. It was in the past, and it was, it was gruesome. It was not fun. It was not something that, the things that he had to do to survive. I have, black and white pictures of his time over in Switzerland and various places when they've snapped those pictures. But more of the details of it, I don't have, and unfortunately I will never have, because he's deceased. And you kind of have to respect some of that there, because what they saw was not pretty. When you go to war, it's not pretty. And Veterans Day is not only for those who serve, but it's also for the families who serve, because when your loved one is in war, not only do your children worry about you, but your, spouse does, your mother, your father, your siblings do, and they just want you to come home safe. So freedom is not free. It is paid with the blood, sweat, and tears of those who serve and who are left behind. So I want to thank everybody who serves in the military. And I want to pay tribute to those who have given the ultimate sacrifice for what they believe in, and what they believe in is right and just. And let us never forget who serve our country. Buy a poppy, remember its symbolism, and have compassion for those suffering after war with PTSD and other mental issues. It doesn't mean that they were not strong. It was just meaning that they were strong too much, and it's no shame to lean on somebody and ask for help. But a lot of those people don't want to, because they feel like it's a sign of weakness, and it could not be further from the truth. It is a sign of strength. And I want to end this show with, I love this speech, and it's from a movie. It's from the movie Independence Day. And Bill Pullman gives the speech about how we are going to to regain our Independence Day from the aliens. It's a powerful speech. It's a patriotic speech, and I really enjoy it. I enjoy listening to Churchill. I enjoy listening to the previous presidents, and just various historical things. And these are actual recordings from those presidents, from those admirals who actually, a lot of these recordings were from the actual battlefields and speeches that they gave right before they went into combat. Some of those people did not come back home. And this is their last audio that you could hear of some of those people. So I'm going to end the show, and thank you, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Good morning. In less than an hour, aircraft from here will join others from around the world. And you will be launching the largest aerial battle in the history of mankind. Mankind, that word should have new meaning for all of us today. We can't be consumed by our petty differences anymore. We will be united in our common interest. Perhaps it's fate that today is the 4th of July, and you will once again be fighting for our freedom. Not from tyranny, oppression, or persecution, but from annihilation. We're fighting for our right to live, to exist. And should we win the day, the 4th of July will no longer be known as an American holiday, but as the day when the world declared in one voice, we will not go quietly into the night. We will not vanish without a fight. We're going to live on. We're going to survive. Today, we celebrate our Independence Day.